We are entering the worst inflation of our lifetimes. It's really bad, and I think it's going to get a little worse, and I want you to understand it because, hey, maybe you can avoid it a little bit, and at least you know what's going on. And I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm Chris Martinson. I'm your information scout. And am I engaging in hyperbole? Am I oversaying this? No, here's the data. You know me, I bring the goods. So let's go there. Today, we're going to be talking about this worst inflation, and this is a topic we all need to know more about. And here's the data. This is from the Federal Reserve. This is the Fred system. This is the Consumer Price Index. That is a measure of inflation. That's what they tell you about. Oh, hey, this underestimates inflation badly for reasons I just discussed with Ed Butowski of the Chapwood Index. Also, my crash course chapter on inflation covers this really completely. But let's talk about it. Let's pretend it is accurate, and we'll talk about it from that standpoint. Let me get my laser pointer out here. You see this flat section down here? That's what inflation was for a long time, relatively tame, and then all of a sudden it turns the corner here and starts bolting upward. This region right here is the terrible 1970s, the last big round of high inflation, but today's worse. I'll tell you why in a second, but what happened? Why did inflation suddenly, was trundling along at this low rate and then suddenly goes much faster? Because of August 15th, 1971. That's when Nixon slammed the gold window, and ever since then, the United States has been, well, without any mooring, without any tethering. Hey, you want a war? Great. We'll have one of those and a tax cut. We just printed, and then COVID came along, massive printing, and that gives us this last part right here. Look how steep that is. The steeper this line, the faster the prices are going up in your life. This is your auto insurance, your grocery bill, what you have to pay for rent, all of it, right? So this is the steepest, fastest line on this chart, which means if we compare this to, say, the 1970s, this is worse. It's way worse because there's nothing back here that's as steep as that line. Here, let's draw a little line on there. See that black line on there? Look at the steepness of that. And you won't find any similar steepness back here. So as bad as the 70s were, they're not as bad as what you are living through today. And this is absolutely crushing your paycheck. And this is about to get a lot worse because we now have wage inflation has now entered the chat. You just saw UPS drivers demanded and got $170,000 a year pay and benefit packages. The UAW is now striking in all around Detroit for the same reason. This is coming soon to a theater near you. And what happens when you pay people more? You have to pay more for the products they make. So that's why I say today is worse than the 70s, because there's nothing comparable in those two green circles. What we're living through right now is the highest inflation of our lifetimes. So, well, what does that mean? Now, this is the spin. I mean, are you tired? Are you as tired as I am of being gaslit, right? We just get gaslit all the time, and it's really just a big problem for all of us. And so here's the issue. Nice places like the AP, who, I've beat up on their fact checkers before all through the COVID period because they did a terrible, not just a terrible job, they got it wrong almost every time. Here they are trying to gaslight you into, look at this, U.S. inflation hits its lowest point since early 2021 as prices ease for gas, groceries, and used cars. Look at this. Americans have gained some much needed relief with inflation reaching its lowest point since early 2021. They're confusing a decline in the rate of inflation with a decline in the prices of things. They're muddying that water on purpose. Inflation hasn't gone down. It's just not going up as high as it was just a little while ago. That's not the same thing. Prices are still up 3% in June compared with a year earlier. Well, the most recent reading we just got in August, up 3.7%. So inflation is now going the other direction. You will not see AP write the article saying, inflation now worse, bringing some much hated higher prices to Americans. This is just spin. So this is your no spin zone. We'll get it right. Now, I just told you the UAW is going on strike against GM, Ford, and Stellantis, which makes Jeeps. So let's look at this. They said, as of Wednesday, the companies had offered wage increases of 17.5%, right? Get that? To 20% over more than 4 years. That sounds good, right? We're going to get a 20% pay hike. Sounds awesome, right? Not so fast. Let's decompose that, and I'll tell you why. First, we're going to run the numbers. This is what the CPI for all urban consumers looks like. This was look at this horrifying period. It's true, the rate of inflation has come down. Here it is ticking back up to 3.7 again right there. But this is way above any other time we would have seen in this data series going back to the 1970s. Let's get it further. So here we are running the numbers. This is how much on a yearly basis prices went up, say in January of 2022, right there. On a yearly basis, prices went up 7.5% in that month. So if you compare this January to a year ago, January 2021, you found a 7.5% increase. Next month, 7.9. Next month, 8.5. And you can see it's been coming back down a little, but it's been rising for the past 2 months from 3 to 3.2 to 3.7. What does that mean? These sound tame. 3%, Chris. Who cares? You know what? Maybe you shouldn't. But let's check this out real quick. So what's interesting here is we see if we take these numbers, and I said, hey, let's start somebody with a $60,000 annual salary. We would find that just in the month of January, facing that 7.5% yearly increase, so we divide that 7.5 by 12 because it's just 1 month out of 12, we discover that they would have had the same purchasing power this January of $59,625. They lost $375. Where'd it go? You're earning the same amount of money, but you lost $375 just in January from your total purchasing power from your salary. Carry it on in February. Now we're down to $59,232, and so on. As we strip through these yellow numbers and keep multiplying them out, we find that by August of 2023, that person who had a $60,000 salary and purchasing power on January 1st of 2022, by August 2023, has lost 10.5% of their purchasing power. It's like they're earning $53,714. It's terrible. It is a terrible decrease. And so let's keep running those numbers. So it means that if inflation stays at 3.7, where it is right now, it doesn't get worse, doesn't get better, and the company here is offering 17.5 to 20% increases in their salaries over more than 4 years, but we'll call it 4. It means when we run the numbers that it's like they would have gained 17.5% maybe, but they lost 14%. So slightly ahead, slightly even more ahead if they get that 20% increase. But what happens if inflation goes to 4%? Is that unthinkable? No, it's been running way hotter than that for the past year on average. Well, now they're kind of at a break-even point. Now they're down 16.8% in terms of what they can buy, but maybe they got a 17.5% bump. It's a break-even in my world. But what if inflation goes back to where it was? Say at 5%. Well, now they're starting to lose. What happens if inflation goes to, say, 8%? Now they're crushed. They lost 28%. The best they could have gotten was a 20% increase. They are losing ground. This is why things are so hard. This is why people are really upset with things right now. This is why it's so hard for you to get ahead. This is why it feels like you're working harder and harder and somehow you're falling behind. It's because you are. For 28 straight months, workers have been losing ground. Median wages, real median wages have been negative. Inflation has been higher than people's pay increases for 28 straight months. That's what the UAW is trying to correct. So, but wait a minute. It gets even worse than that. Remember, I just interviewed Ed Butowski of the Chapwood Index. The Chapwood Index is a very simple index. It's not, I told you the CPI is full of government lies. Well, they are. His index is full of the truth because all he does is measure the same 200 products every month, month over month, and that's it. It doesn't substitute, doesn't hedonically adjust, doesn't do any of that. And he found that in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Philly, Phoenix, San Antonio, San Diego, and Dallas, and many, many others, he does, 50 largest cities, that the average increase from 2021 to 2022 was anywhere from 13.5% to 10%. So let's call that a 12% increase on average. That's what the real inflation rate was, not the 4% that the government said it was. That's massive. So now what happens if those same UAW workers instead are facing 12% inflation, which they are because they live in cities, right? Like Chicago and places like that. So under that terms, they will gain 20% from the auto companies and they will lose 40% in their purchasing power. They will be worse off than before, and they're having to fight like tooth and nail to try and get that particular wage increase. So what do we mean by all this? Where does this get us? Well, it's very simple. You have to be prepared for higher inflation. It's coming. In part 2 of this, which is back at Peak Prosperity, I'm going to talk for my subscribers all about exactly where the inflation is coming from and what you can do and what you should be doing in terms of where you put your money, strategies you can take, all of that. And that's for my subscribers back at Peak Prosperity. But before we go there, I do have a dating tip for all you gentlemen out there. Forget the flowers. Times have changed. You're going to want to bring your girl a chicken going forward. With that, thank you very much for listening. And oh, by the way, if you want to hear that Ed Butowski interview, you can click right here and see that. Hey, and if you want to check out the rest of our channel at Peak Prosperity, we've got a lot of other great content. Click here. Otherwise, my request, please share this video. It helps us get around the algorithm, which for some reason doesn't like us talking about this kind of information. If you could just share it, I would appreciate it because that helps us. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.